Welcome, everybody. It's good to have you join us, and we're very excited to have Orlando Lopez and Gabriel join us today with regard to the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research. This is what I consider maybe one of the more unknown or esoteric of the agencies, and this is exactly the reason why we had Orlando and Gabriel join us today. They do a lot of focus on dental materials and biomaterials, and I know that many of us were not aware of that. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lopez, and then Gabriel Hidalgo, if you don't mind introducing yourself very briefly as well. Orlando's background is biomaterials portfolio and concentration on restoration, repair of dental and craniofacial tissues and so forth. He also oversees the an interagency agreement with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And not to be outdone by that, he also serves on various NIH and interagency committees focused on enabling technologies, regenerative medicine, and computational modeling as well. So welcome to both of you. And Gabriel, maybe if you could introduce yourself very briefly as well, that'd be terrific.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriel Hidalgo, and I am the team lead in the grants management branch in the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research. I've been working here as the team leader and also the deputy chief of the branch for the past 5 years. My background actually is also in biotechnology, but I transitioned into the administrative and policy work in grants management in 2010 when I joined NCATS, and then I transitioned to NIDCR. So thank you everyone for being here, and pass it on to Orlando.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you everybody and thank you Martin and Misty especially for the opportunity to engage with this community and participate in this program and share with you some of the very exciting initiatives that we undertake and the breadth and scope of the interest areas that we look to share with you. As a way of background as well, just to add, I wear a number of different hats in our institute. In addition to the dental materials biomaterials program that I oversee, the program is actually a very much a very diverse program. It's a technology development focused program. In addition to the biomaterials, and I'll be talking a little bit about that. We also cover a number of different areas related to biosensors, biodevices, digital technologies, specifically around digital dentistry. I'm also the coordinator for our small business program in the institute, and very much liaise across NIH with the main NIH small business activities. Prior to this role, I came from FDA, where I spent about 6-7 years working as a lead regulatory reviewer in medical devices. And so I also act as a point of contact and collaborator with our FDA colleagues for a number of different interagency aspects. And so I'll be sharing some of that perspective as well, which is very important for our small business activities. So can everybody see the slides? I just want to make sure that the slides are coming through.
We can indeed. Thanks,
okay.
Orlando.
Excellent. Okay, great. And of course, Gabriel's role is very paramount important here, because a lot of the administrative policy aspects related to how applications are considered and awarded is definitely a very important, significant aspect of the applications. So I'm very pleased that Gabriel is able to be with us today as well. So just to share, high-level perspective on NIH. The NIH, our mission essentially is to seek fundamental knowledge at a very basic level about the nature and behavior of living systems, and the application of that knowledge to enhance health, to lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. So essentially, we work to discover and then package that knowledge into innovations that can be brought to market in different ways. NIH is composed of 27 different institutes across the board, divided into either organ systems or disease areas. Very much something that is not typically known by many folks in the small business space is that NIH is actually the largest funder of biomedical research in the world. The budget is roughly, nearing $40 billion in funding, and about 80% of that is allocated to extramural research to fund projects in academia and small business across several thousand institutions domestically, but also around the world. Close to 300,000 scientific and research projects are funded through this. In terms of application rates, we get over 70,000 applications, and I think now it's pushing closer to 100,000, and roughly about nearly half of that are awarded annually. So you can imagine the breadth and depth of the activities across the board through the different institutes, and I definitely invite our attendees to look into the different areas and try to maybe inquire about the different aspects. In addition to the extramural activities, we have a number of different institutes do have intramural activities and very active research that actually takes place at NIH as well, in the scope of very much cutting edge leading research that in many aspects is then translated out through our technology transfer activities as well. As part of the case right now with the current situation that we're undertaking with the pandemic, there's a lot of activity around vaccines and understanding and research around coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 virus, also the actual disease markers and so forth. From the perspective of our institute, the National Institute of Dental Craniofacial Research, we are definitely one of the main leaders in the dental oral and craniofacial space, not just in the United States, but across the board, around the world. And our activities really center, along the paradigm of a basic research, the translation of that research through preclinical science, preclinical development, clinical research, clinical trials, clinical observation type studies, as well as community and population health. Our activities are divided into a number of different disease areas, addressing a number of different aspects, whether it's, the most prominent disease, which is caries, periodontal disease, cancers, a lot of salivary disorders, craniofacial disorders, different manifestations and systematic disease areas, as well as rare conditions from a neurological perspective or any other type of malfunction of tissues and organ systems that affect craniofacial areas. Our programs are divided into a number of different segments. My program is the Biomaterials program. Like I mentioned, it's a technology development portfolio, which also houses roughly about, it actually houses most of the small business activity that we see coming through our institute. In addition to wearing the hat of the program officer for this particular program, I oversee a significant number of the small business applications as well. And then, it makes sense that to collaborate some of the activities of small business for our institute. We also participate in a number of different areas around workforce development, different development of tools and technologies. There's significant interest and activities around data science and omics, and of course, interest in a lot of activity and initiatives to promote research around health disparities, social determinants of health, and the likes. To give some perspective, in terms of what should be considered and some of the major aspects for bringing a product to market in the context of biomedical product development, which in a sense is the most complex regulated industry there is. Of course, there are significant milestones and significant challenges. So overall, I think there's two main aspects that should be considered. There are the clinical factors, and then there's non-clinical factors. In terms of clinical factors, I think that it's always important to consider the clinical needs as the drivers for the development. And so for technologists, engineers, entrepreneurs, I think, and I always encourage them to partner up and to collaborate very closely with clinician teams that are able to guide the development of the technologies they're looking to bring to market, because the clinical indication, the clinical utility, functionality is ultimately, what's really going to make a difference in this space. Also, safety considerations are significantly important, especially in the early stages of development. And effectiveness, of course, is very important, but, for a significant aspect, that I've seen many folks undergoing small business activities always try to drive effectiveness first, rather than focusing on the safety. Effectiveness is important, especially for like a business, from the business perspective in terms of innovation, of course. But, if you want to bring something forward and put it through regulatory paradigm, safety is the most important consideration. From the business perspective, there's non-clinical factors that of course are revolve around IP, tech transfer considerations, reimbursement, market demand, which are to some extent different than the clinical needs, but those are also very much important for consideration in bringing a product to market. There is different factors related to supply chain, resources, manufacturing, upscale manufacturing, processing, and of course the regulatory strategy, regulatory considerations. So from the product development life cycle, we start from early stage discovery, ideation. Typically, NIH is very much involved with this through our different grant mechanisms. The innovation then sort of flows into a iterative process, that goes into early stage invention, prototyping. And then, ideally that moves into more elaborate, advanced preclinical development, clinical testing to, determine some of the verification, validation activities that are then important to have markers of safety and effectiveness at the preclinical stage. And then those should be all aligned with regulatory considerations and potential CMS reimbursement considerations as well, but those are sort of downstream. But it's important to start thinking about this paradigm early on. Typically for small business activities, small business grants, we like projects that have somewhat of a feasibility, early feasibility demonstration, especially for the phase 1, phase 2. Well, phase 1, we look for like early stage feasibility, maybe early stage prototype, and then going into a phase 2, which is more advanced. And we'll be talking about, some of the differences between the two stages and the different, types of small business grants. But just to kind of give you a high level perspective here, the phase 2 activities, look to start, with maybe like a early stage minimum viable product that can then go on into these like preclinical development areas. We also work very closely, to support projects, that need to enter or will be entering into the clinical stages of testing, into clinical validation, to look at the effectiveness aspects, and hopefully to support claims on potential indications for pre-market approvals through FDA. And then, the post-market, once a product, gets a regulatory decision, hopefully an approval or a clearance from a medical device perspective, typically those are 510Ks. And then the product will go, of course, into post-market. So for small business considerations, SBIR, STTR, some of the main factors that I think I will highlight that are important aspects for an application and a project to be considered are, of course, looking at feasibility, demonstrating some of that in terms of the approach that is being put forward, product development, having the regulatory strategy identified to some extent, maybe engaging with FDA early to try to get some of that idea, or having on the team people that are have some expertise regarding the product domain area, and that can speak to some major considerations and milestones around the regulatory aspects, and of course, especially for the more advanced projects that go into a phase 2 or a fast track type of application, the commercialization plan is important as to demonstrating what kind of infrastructure and vision the team is looking to to put forward to bring this product to market, either through licensing deals or actually carrying the product all the way through and bringing it to market themselves. There's a number of different models that can be considered there. So in terms of activities and specific areas of interest at NIDCR, we're very much involved in the digital dentistry space. We have a number of different areas and funding opportunity announcements that are highlighted here, and I believe the slides will become available for reference. So these are all live links that folks can point to. So we have an initiative, a small business initiative, SBIR, STTR, around advancing imaging, device production, and clinical capabilities in digital dentistry. We have another one related to enabling technologies to accelerate development of oral bio-devices, and this very much, this comes in a number of different mechanisms, including traditional R01, R21, which are typically mostly used by academic researchers, but are also available for small business. Many small business, for some reason, don't tend to take advantage of those, but those could be also, great opportunities for small business development. And then these are more the traditional SBIR, STTR. I will be, just getting into a little bit more detail about these two initiatives in upcoming slides. But in addition to that, we have, especially around oral cancer type areas, we have precision imaging for oral lesion initiatives. And most recently, we also have this trans NIH effort around the commercialization of understudied proteins. And this is pointing to our Illuminating Druggable Genome project. We most recently, I think within the past year or so, NIDCR launched a new program, and we got a new program oversight for that, which is related to bioinformatics, computational biology, data science, and very much kind of points to the interest and efforts around digital dentistry and digital technologies, including machine learning, AI, blockchain, and the likes, to address some of the big data data science needs to streamline some of these different aspects of scientific research and commercialization. The Digital Dentistry Initiative, it really points to, enabling the translation, or the transition and transformation of moving from the analog-based approach to a more digital approach, which, it goes from, being a fully customized, centralized type of platform to a more customizable, modular, decentralized, automated type system. We are seeing, significant impact across the board of this type of techniques, from the, anywhere from the imaging type techniques or any other type of clinical Internet of Things, IoT type capability for biosensing, to help drive the fabrication and production of different devices, different other therapeutic type technologies, associated with development and manufacturing around the leveraging of 3D additive manufacturing, CAD/CAM type systems, which are having, direct impact, around a number of different specialties and subspecialties in dentistry, most predominantly around restorative dentistry, periodontal surgeries, implantology, maxillofacial reconstructions, and the convergence of regenerative medicine as well, is also being integrated with 3D printing for bioprinting around different bone regeneration and other types of tissue therapeutics. From the perspective of the oral biodevices initiative and our goals, really here the vision is to leverage the oral cavity as a target site to enable the capturing of a wealth of information that can be leveraged from the mouth to help and facilitate the integration of oral health and overall health. So we can see that, from just like the schematic here, I mean, really like everything enters through the mouth to some extent. And then the mouth can be a significant segue to enable a number of different measurements of biosignatures that could be leveraged either from directly from measurements through tissues, fluid samples like saliva, or exhale breath, exhale droplets, as is the case for the SARS-CoV-2 COVID-19 disease. So from a product development perspective, there are significant challenges associated with the engineering and design of biosensors, intraoral type devices that are either embeddable or long-term dwelling into the oral cavity. The oral environment is very unforgiving to some extent. There is significant variations of extreme conditions like temperatures. When somebody having a cup of hot coffee and then suddenly they start having ice cream, for instance, or the pH changes, the biological environment, microbiome in the oral cavity is very, it can be very extreme as well, which, all these different factors can cause significant challenges from a design perspective, the human factors, and also to ensure that, the patient, the human subject is going to comply with the usage of these systems, can be a significant challenge. So we have been supporting this type of work, for a number of years now. I think we're in, the third, fourth year that we're supporting this type of activities, and we definitely, and we have, seen some significant developments. And our goal here is to develop these biosensing capabilities that then could be integrated into integrated systems, to drive like therapeutic type capabilities, drug delivery systems or other types of therapeutic, like, different stimulation, electrical stimulation, or other means of therapeutics, or to guide therapies based on specific guidance systems, data resources that can be then integrated into intelligent mobile platforms. Most recently, of course, giving and considering the situation of the pandemic, NIH is brought forward and it's been charged with supporting the development of diagnostics for the COVID-19 disease. And NIH launched early in March, April time period, an initiative around rapid acceleration of diagnostics for COVID-19 testing, to accelerate the innovation and development of these technologies and the commercialization thereof via a number of different sub-program areas. The first one that came on board or that was launched was the RADix Tech, and perhaps some of the attendees have some knowledge of this program. I think NIH received over $1 billion for this initiative, and the different sort of sub-initiatives or sub-programs are listed here. We've been especially involved and launched a new initiative around the Radix Radical program, which is bolded here in red, in the red box. And it aims to develop and advance very novel and non-traditional approaches to new applications for testing by leveraging the oral cavity and bypassing some of the third-party supply chain constraints like swabs and reagents that might be needed to conduct these tests in a rapid and reliable way. In addition, there is a number of different data management support core developments for to support these initiatives, as the idea is to have the testing be essentially linked and integrated with data management type capabilities. More specifically, NIDCR, like I mentioned, is leading one of the programs here around the oral biosensing for COVID detection, where we are looking to have intraoral or extraoral type of devices that are able to capture in a very novel way across different detection schemes, different biomarkers that could be relatable to the presence of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in asymptomatic, symptomatic patients, as well as the different presentations of the COVID-19 disease. We are collaborating with our sister institute of NCATS, which is the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. Their interest is on the detection of the COVID-19 disease through SENT, electronic nose technology. The acronym for it is SENT. And so where they're looking to leverage the capability of a canine olfactory system to be able to detect different eminence or generation of volatile organic compounds through the skin or from the skin. So these are all aimed to be very novel technologies. We're looking to support projects across the development, early stage development cycle to advance prototyping, proof of concept demonstrations for the next 2-3 years. And currently we're going through the process of reviewing the applications that came in for this initiative about 3 weeks ago or so. Now, nonetheless, this specific opportunities are closed, but nonetheless, we're still very much interested in this topic, and we definitely are open to considering new concepts, new proposals around this type of information, this type of technology development. In addition to that, we're also very committed to supporting clinical translation and commercialization of the different areas that I just discussed. There's different programs around partnerships, supporting academic industrial partnerships that are very relevant and important, to translation of different developments, especially those that might require clinical trial type of support. We have our traditional omnibus solicitation, which essentially supports any unsolicited type of area, and anything that I just mentioned here, specific programs, may not be covered. Certain projects, certain concepts may not be covered by those special emphasis call for proposals, and so the ones that may stand, outside of those special emphasis ones, could come in as omnibus solicitations. We have a very broad range of national dental practice-based research network, around the country. A lot of dentists are connected to this and conducting research of their own, through this network, and this could also be leveraged to support certain partnerships and collaborations, for product development. We are also signed on to the program on commercialization readiness pilot program, which provides support of technical assistance and late stage development. The eligibility for this CRP program essentially calls for folks that have already been awarded an SBIR or STTR type mechanism. So the idea is to sort of to fund and support the later stages of the development beyond the traditional SBIR, STTR. And then there is other aspects related to establishing outcome measures, from clinical studies. And then, there is the traditional parent awards, very much like the omnibus small business mechanisms. There is the NIH R1, R21 type mechanisms. So from here, I will transfer over to Gabriel. He will be discussing some of the different aspects of the SBIR, STTR programs, and we'll close it off and open it up for questions after that. So Gabriel, please take it away.
Thank you, Orlando, for that nice overview of NIDCR's program. Now I will talk through a brief SBIR STTR program overview, but from the administrative standpoint. As you or most of you are aware, these two programs are Congress mandated. Therefore, there's a set-aside fund each year to award projects under these two programs. The Small Business Innovation Research Program, or SBIR, is the set-aside program for small businesses to engage in federal R&D with, again, potential to commercialization already in phase 2. On the other hand, the Small Business Technology Transfer, or STTR program, is the set-aside program to facilitate cooperative R&D between small business organizations and U.S. research institutions. There you must have a partner, a research institution partner, again with potential of commercialization in phase 2. Additionally, the SBIR STTR Commercialization Readiness Pilot Program, the CRP, which was renewed this past reauthorization, and this program aims to facilitate the transition of previously awarded, as Orlando mentioned, previously awarded SBIR and STTR Phase 2 and Phase 2B projects to commercialization. There is no set aside per se, as you can see here in these slides. However, it does count towards the set aside fund for each year, the Congress mandated set aside funds. Next slide, please. So the latest reauthorization raised the maximum program levels for each small business program, as indicated in this slide. For the SBIR STTR Phase 1, the total funding support may not exceed the $256,580 mark, and the Phase 2 total funding support may not exceed the $1.7 million mark. However, what happens if after you build your budget and you're ready to apply, you go above this, then you need to make sure that the scientific topic is one that the Small Business Administration, or SBA, has approved. There's a live link in this slide that you can check the different topic waivers that the SBA has issued. But like with everything, if you have an application, if you have an idea, I encourage you to contact the program officer listed on that funding opportunity announcement, and or also contact the grants management contact on that funding opportunity announcement to get more information about whether or not you can go above the hard caps. Next slide, please. There are other costs that are related to the SBIR STTR applications, such as the fee, which is intended to provide a normal profit margin for for-profit organizations. Per policy cannot exceed the 7% of the total costs. That includes the indirect costs. So it's 7% of the total costs. In NIDCR, if the fee is not requested as part of the budget request, this means that the small business organization is waiving these costs and will not be awarded. Then also another type of cost is the F&A costs, or facilities and administration costs, or what is also called the indirect costs. If the applicant small business concern has a current negotiated rate with the government, that rate will be used for calculating the indirect costs. However, if the rate is not available, then the estimated F&A cost rate will not be in excess of 40% of the total direct costs. Then market research, which is another cost that sometimes applicants will put in their application. It is not an allowed cost under the NIH grants policy statement. So this will not be supported. Again, if you have any questions about any costs, I will urge you to contact the grants management contact on the listed on the funding opportunity announcement. Next slide, please. Some requirements, eligibility and administrative requirements to apply for an SBIR or STTR program. The applicant organization has to be a small business, so the number of employees will have not to be more than 500. Only U.S. small business organizations are eligible to submit SBIR and STTR applications, and the place of performance for the project must be in its entirety in the U.S. However, if there is enough justification for some a part of the program or a part of the project to be performed outside of the US, that needs to be included in the application. And again, it's a foreign justification. Usually it is not approved, but again, with enough justification, you might be able to get awarded it. For SBIRs, the principal investigator or the program director of the project will need to spend more than half of his or her time as an employee of the small business applicant, or has received a written deviation approved by the NIH, which includes, again, the percentage of time approved. For STTR, there's no the PI, the percentage minimum of effort for the principal investigator or the program director is 10% or 1.2 calendar months. And although his or her employment does not have to be more than 50% on the small business concern, there has to be a formal agreement with the small business organization. Then the minimal level of effort for the SBIR in phase 1, at least 67% must be carried by the small business concern. In phase 2, at least 50% has to be carried by the small business organization. And in STTR in phases 1 and 2, at least 40% has to be carried out in the by the small business organization. How is this calculated? You have to look at the total costs that are being allocated into the applicant organization versus all the other partner institutions, including the research partner institution. Also, another administrative requirement and eligibility, a commercialization plan must be included in the phase 2 application. Next slide, please. This is just a quick table showing you just a couple of the critical differences between the SBIR and STTR. Again, going with the principal investigator or program director, in SBIR, they have to be employed by the small business organization, and the STTR, although the employment is not stipulated on the eligibility criteria on the policy, there has to be a formal agreement. In the research, and on the other hand, having a nonprofit research partner, in the SBIR, in phase 1, the research institution, the partner, can complete up to 33% of the total effort, or total costs have to be allocated up to 33% to the nonprofit research partner, and up to 50% in phase 2. And STTRs, the small business concern or the small business applicant or organization must perform at least 40% of the work, and the research institution must perform at least 30%. The remaining 30% can be with the small business, the collaborating nonprofit research institution, or other additional third parties, and which includes other subcontracts. And I think that's all I have to say about the administrative requirements and eligibility and other administrative items of discussion on the SBIR and STTR applications for NIDCR.
Well, with that, I think we'll just close it off. So thank you very much for your attention and the opportunity to share this information. And Martin, just give it back to you to open it up for questions if there is any.
Thank you very much indeed, Gabrielle and Orlando. And I have a wealth of questions, but it's all your fault because you gave us a wealth of information. But I wanted to ask, Alexander On has a question, and his question is, do you need FDA approval for devices such as three-dimensional, I think that's what you're referencing, Alexander, intraoral scanners and computer-guided implant programs? And if you need FDA approval, do you need that first before getting a grant?
Okay, so so the question seems to be a regulatory question.
Yeah.
So although my background is in regulatory, you know, FDA will still have the final word on whether or not you will need FDA approval. But for the most part, you know, so in the context of the small business application and the small business program, it is of course preferable, as I alluded to have a project be well defined in terms of a framework for the product development that is aligned with the possible or potential regulatory requirements. So it is helpful to have an initial scope, an initial idea, especially around, you know, what those, well, initially, well, you have to think about what kind of potential designation and product classification might be relevant to the product.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you can start thinking about, you know, any type of relevant guidance or standards, industry consensus standards that might be relevant for that particular product area. And then including some of those, you know, as part of your product development activities, you know, to best align the product development work with the regulatory requirements. Yep. Also highly encourage, you know, to interact early and often with FDA, especially in gray areas or emerging technologies that may not be as clear-cut in terms of potential, you know, regulatory policy, you know, to get an idea as to what kind of pathway might be most viable for the particular claims that you're looking to make, whether there's technical claims versus clinical claims and so forth. So ideal is airing out as much as possible about the regulatory considerations will be very helpful to craft a very strong application.
Yeah, Orlando, I think that's a very sound advice. And I think we probably would need to, if we get to phase 2, if we get approval to move forward with phase 2 following completion of phase 1 deliverables, that we might have to include a discussion of our FDA requisites and plans anyway. And I think you were referencing also, Orlando, which makes perfect sense, early, often correspondence communication with the FDA. They have a pre-submission program as well. Mm-hmm. So for everyone, feel free to reach out to Misty or yours truly here, and we're very happy to discuss that with you. I wanted to, Gabrielle, very helpful your discussions with regard to financing and so forth. I wanted to see if you could help clarify for those of us who might be considering an STTR versus an SBIR, and you had mentioned 10% minimum requirement for a PI. Is that exclusive to you folks, or is that across the board NIH?
Yes, hi. So that's a very good question. That's written on the NIH policy. But with every policy written, there's also, you know, the need for if there is any kind of deviation for that. 10% is basically the norm when you list a level of effort for a principal investigator, which is again 1.2 calendar months. That might be 1 to 2 days per week in a year. So So again, that's the policy across the NIH, and that's the policy that NIDCR follows. However, if there's any particular changes or any particular deviations for that policy in any other institute or center, again, I encourage you to talk to your grants management folks at those institutes or centers.
Terrific. And Gabrielle, again, I think you're the one who had mentioned this topic, so I wanted to follow up with you again. You had a discussion with regard to there are considerations where researchers who are outside of the U.S. Might be considerable for reaching out, I think, and submitting a proposal for SBIR or STTR. My reason for asking that is that here at UC Riverside, we have international relationships with researchers from universities in South America, for example, Chile, and elsewhere. And some of their transformative innovations are absolutely phenomenal. Are there any ways for them to be considered for SBIR or STTR grants? And if so, what would be the conditions for that?
Okay, so that's a very good question. Per policy and per the funding opportunity announcement, per the omnibus solicitation for the SBIR and STTR, only U.S. based small business concerns or small business organizations are eligible to submit SBIR and STTR applications. And the place of performance must be in its entirety in the U.S. However, if there is enough justification for a subcontract or a third-party partner to be outside of the U.S., that can be considered. It's a case-by-case situation, and you will need to include a justification, the foreign justification, in the application. But again, the application has to come from a U.S.-based small business concern.
Okay, terrific. That's helped. That has always been a confusing topic for a lot of people. And I think some of us know the answer, Orlando and Gabrielle, but one of you had mentioned the phase 1 and phase 2 limits, 256, 480 or something close to that for phase 1, hard cap waiver opportunity there as well. You had referenced the indirect costs and the profit as well, the 7%. Just for everyone's clarification, the indirect costs, and I think you had mentioned the 40% of direct costs, that would be, I think, the level before there might be a possible risk, I guess, of maybe an audit or some questions. But the indirect costs and the profit, they do need to be a part of the 256,000 and change, not in addition or on top of that. Is that correct?
Yes, this is Gabriel here. Yes. So the fee, the 7% fee of the total cost, and the indirect cost of the application are included within the hard cap.
Okay. And Orlando, you had mentioned, I believe, academic industrial partnership program. This is something that's near and dear to our hearts, and something that we are promoting heavily. And in many respects, a lot of our clients, we need to often fortify the team. Which is why many of the startups may reach out to the University of California, for example, also corporate partnerships and so forth to raise credibility, credentials, and so forth, and perhaps raise the prospects of being awarded. Could you elaborate a little bit more about the academic industrial partnership program and what you mean by that, and how we need to address that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, so I mean, in essence, it is really an opportunity to help advance scientific, especially early stage scientific research to the market by leveraging some of the potential infrastructure that commercial partners might already have in place, especially around certain types of technologies that might be more challenging, than others, maybe more, cost effective to leverage some of the, manufacturing type capabilities perhaps, or the marketing commercialization aspects, or even, some of the actual delivery of the products to market. So it could come in a number of different ways. Each partnership should include at least one academic and one industrial organization.
Okay.
Yeah, also there should be a plan to transition the technology, method, assay, or device in a meaningful way. So there should be, essentially a plan and this is typically a part of the types of different mechanisms that we see when there is, let's say, like a multi-PI type arrangement. You have multiple investigators, so you need to have some level of plan on how the projects are going to be managed. Who's going to be responsible for what, and having a good and robust strategy to move the technology towards the translation paradigm. So that's sort of the idea. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that helps. And another question that I had to Orlando, I'm just trying to connect the dots, tie up the loose ends, distinguish between the CRP, or maybe they're part of the same program, Phase 0. You had mentioned, I believe, Applicant Assistant Program, which several of our EPIC SBDC clients have taken advantage of, by the way, and have indicated that that's been really valuable for them. But CRP, and I believe another, one of your colleagues from another agency had mentioned, and I could be on another planet here, Catalyst program. Does that kind of ring a bell? Or
the Catalyst program? Yeah, I think I haven't been involved with that specifically, or I might be confusing that one. So
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, so there is essentially a network of commercialization hubs that are being funded, have been funded and are established through NIH, through the REACH program, which is essentially the research enhancement commercialization type of network, where I believe there is upwards of like 10 to 12 different hubs that are regionally based around the country, and each constitutes a number of different partnerships, at the local level, for across different institutions. And then the idea is that these hubs provide, certain level of incubation for projects that might be relatively in the early stage, and then the idea is to help these projects grow some legs towards the commercialization, potential possibility to position these projects towards, the likelihood of being competitive for SBIR, STTR type of projects or applications. And so I recall one of the hubs, I think the acronym is Catalyst. So that maybe am I confusing? I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but so I believe that one of them I recall is called Catalyst, but there is another network through our SBIR, STTR office in the small business program that essentially do help, in terms of partnerships and providing resources to our small business community in regards to just different aspects around the projects, regarding potential support with regulatory or commercialization, market research. So this is like a add-on type of services that could be part of the actual funded projects through our small business initiatives.
Yeah, I think one of our sister universities, UC San Francisco, is part of the REACH program, by the way. Mm-hmm. How does one get considered for support through the REACH program? Are these already funded small business concerns that have, or maybe at a stage of maybe reaching the completion of their phase 2 deliverables, or is it earlier than that?
Well, so each, and we're actually some of the RADx RAD initiative that I mentioned about the biosensing for COVID detection projects. We're actually running a special solicitation through the REACH program. And so my understanding is that each hub, well, so each hub has already been funded. You know, there was a competitive call for proposals, you know, across the country to fund the different hubs. And so these hubs, the most recent round of hubs was funded in last year, in 2019. I believe there were 5 new hubs that were selected. The previous cohort, I think, took place maybe in 2016 or so. So this new round of hubs added an additional 5 or 6 hubs. So with that, each hub was selected for funding, and so each one is allocated a certain amount of funds, and then each hub has already in place a process as to how they run their solicitations for projects, and then they conduct internal reviews. They have a specific review board that goes through the applications that are received and vetted, and then those projects are then the ones that are sort of raised to the top after they do internal selection. And those projects are then passed on to NIH through our internal network. We have a network of internal experts, you know, across small business, NIH, FDA, and different agencies. And, you know, we participate in that sort of process as well, and everybody, you know, sort of provides the comments, and we give our recommendations to the hubs as to which projects we feel are the strongest to fund, and then they make the final determination on which projects to fund.
Great, thank you. And then one final question, and then I think Misty's going to reach through the computer lines and throttle me here if we don't let you go for your one-on-ones. But matching funds, I know that one or a few agencies have a matching funds program, usually in the phase 2 area. That is to say, if an awardee has a equity capital infusion, and one or two agencies, I think, offer an opportunity with a ceiling to offer matching funds to encourage that. Likewise, matching funds for corporate partnerships to proceed with further additional research above and beyond phase 2. Do you folks and or the NIH, do you get involved in anything like that at all?
I'm not aware of too much of that. I know the REACH hubs, I believe to some extent, some of them may require to have some sort of matching funds to projects. But in my experience, not all the funding opportunities have requirements for matching funds, but maybe Gabriel will have additional comments on that.
Yes, matching funds or cost sharing, what it's also called in the NIH world, is not a requirement in most of the funding opportunity announcements, especially on the SBIR, STTR omnibus solicitation. It is not a requirement. However, if there are any specific programs such as the REACH program, there will be matching funds or cost sharing language on that FOA. So if you are unsure about whether or not the funding opportunity announcement that you are applying to requires matching funds, or what's the level of cost sharing that it's required for that FOA, I will reach out to the grants management contact there.
Got it. Thank you very much indeed, Gabriel. Well, as far as I'm concerned, everyone, Orlando and Gabriel, mission accomplished. We needed to learn a lot more about you, and we did. In particular, that you have an interest in and have funding and continue to fund on initiatives such as bioinformatics, computational biologics, data science, biosignatures, and so forth, in a diagnostic sense and so forth. Extremely valuable to learn that. And so very grateful for your time today, both Orlando and Gabriel. very much appreciated, and it's an honor that you were able to join us today, and thank you very much indeed. That being noted, I'll hand the baton over to Misty. And also, I wanted to say before I close, Misty, if that's okay, is that we do have a workshop this afternoon, 1 o'clock Pacific time. An area that Misty and I refer to as one of the potential deal killer avoidance webinars, and that pertains to research design methodologies, study approach, all the nuances of that. That's an area that most of us who are not formally trained for designing and managing a research initiative as part of our application for SBIR funding, absolutely critical for us to learn how to do that. So this afternoon with Dr. Jillian Wilson, she is going to be spending a lot of quality time with us to go over those details. So please come see us at 1 o'clock. So now, finally, over to you, Misty.
Yes, so I was going to let everyone know that we do have our workshop at 1 o'clock. We're going on break right now. If anyone would like, here's our contact information. Please do reach out to us if you're working on SBIR or STTR proposals. We're here to help. So just send us an email and we can let you know more about the center and the services we provide. So thank you, and see everyone at 1 o'clock.
And thank you again, Orlando and Gabriel. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you,
appreciate the
Martin. Thank you,
opportunity.
Misty.
Thank you, Misty.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.